Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into Tontines. There's not really a standard, people go into banking and there's a whole infrastructure for you go to the right school and you do the right major and then you become an investment banker, but there's not really any established path for how one finds their way into the world of Tontines, or at least not for the last 100 years. So I'd just like to hear a little bit about, how you ended up in this line of work.
Okay, well, let's just say I didn't wake up 3 years ago thinking I want to get into the pensions business. I was living in the south of Spain, semi-retired, and, I'm having a conversation with my mother, who's also living in Spain. And for some reason, she's kind of off her game that day. And, I'm asking her, what's wrong? And she tells me that one of the friends in the golf club has just passed away. I said, oh, she must have been really close to you. Is that why you're so upset? And she's like, yeah, but not really. She says, it's more about the fact that she's so tight with her money. I said, what do you mean by that? And she's like, well, look, you have to understand. She says, in the golf club, we've got all these members aged between 65 and 85. We've all got money. We're down here to enjoy our lives. But the problem is, none of us know how long we're going to live. So we're terrified to spend money. Every day we worry about it. Because if we run out of money, we're going to end up, if our kids don't take care of us, we could end up in the nursing home, back in Ireland or England or something like that, which to them is the equivalent of being sent to prison or something, something
Where
really
in Spain
bad.
is this?
In Marbella.
Okay.
So, can you put this in context? What's this got to do with the lady? And she said, well, the thing is, we worry about this so much. We're terrified of spending money. We worry about it all the time. And she said, but then something happens where this lady passes away. And she was the most careful of all about spending money. She didn't want to spend a penny. And now she's dead. And all that money's sitting in her bank account. She's nobody to leave it to. And she never got to enjoy her retirement. So she says, we're having all these conversations in the club. We're thinking, you know what? Why are we saving? Why don't we just enjoy our retirement? Why don't we just go ahead and spend the money? And this is what they think about. It's like, okay, wow, that's a bit deeper than I expected. And I start going through it with her, and I said, look, how long have you been thinking this way? And she's like, about 20 years. I was like, whoa, okay. I said, is there anybody else in the golf club that thinks that way? She says, every single one of us. It's all we ever talk about. It's like, holy shit, this is a problem. Someone needs to do something about this. So I said, okay, look. I solve problems. Let me go and have a look. And that's, I guess, how I got interested in the topic.
So you have this personal connection to it, but I'm sure your research didn't immediately end up on Tontines. What was, the first place you kind of dipped your toe in and you started to realize the magnitude of this problem and that really what's out there isn't going to solve these problems for anybody?
The first thing I looked at was reverse mortgages. The idea that you give your house to someone and they pay you an income for the rest of your life, and then when you pass away, then your house goes to the company. There was just something didn't feel right about it. I didn't think any of them would agree to do it, and at this point I've now promised them that I'm going to find a solution. I didn't think anybody would be comfortable, signing their home over to someone else. It just feels wrong. So obviously the natural next step to look at was annuities. So I went online and started getting pricing, let me see if I can find some firms. And eventually I did, got a few quotes from the annuities companies, and I was just absolutely shocked by the price, by the value on offer. I just thought, there's no way I can go back to these people and start offering this because, it just doesn't work. So I kind of got stuck at that point. And eventually, in fact, to all her credit, she came and knocked on the door and said, what's going on? Have you found this? Because I've told the people in the golf club my son is on the case. And I just keep looking and looking at it. I start reading about this thing called a tontine. And I'm finding all these academic papers. And all these, highly respected academics around the world have been publishing papers saying, look, there's a retirement crisis in swing. The only way we're going to solve this is to bring back the tontines. And that's how it all started.
Well, if we're going to bring back the Tontines, I think the best place to actually start is to go even further back and look at kind of the evolution of the tontine from its beginnings, how some of the ways that it was used, and actually kind of the death of the tontine. There are some places in the world where they still exist, but in America they were very popular, and now most people have only heard of tontines from episodes of cartoons and dime store mystery novels, so they've kind of fallen out of favor, and there is good reason for that, but it's definitely worth exploring before we jump into how tontines could solve the problem.
We're very much aware of the problem, but the first thing to do is look at what is wrong with the existing solution, because even when I started doing this, all of the firms that I spoke to said, just tell them to buy an annuity. What's wrong with an annuity? But you've had some personal
Yeah, so I actually worked at an insurance company. Right after I graduated, I didn't put enough effort into going and finding a job, and I ended up calling up somebody at my golf club, and he worked at an insurance company. I said, "What do you got? I need something while I figure out what I'm going to do with my life." And I ended up on the annuities desk, helping financial advisors, which the way our company was set up, we were a non-fiduciary, and that meant that all of our advisors were actually working at other companies who we had servicing agreements with. So they were selling our products. Nobody who worked at my company actually sold our products. So these salesmen would call in and they had no idea what they were selling. Not only were some of these benefits not very good or overpriced, but the actual salesmen themselves, the financial advisors, quote unquote, didn't know what they were selling. And then as well, I got to talk to some of the actual annuity holders, and they didn't know how to use these products. They were overly complex, and the company itself ended up actually misforecasting interest rates so poorly that they had to close down the entire annuity business in an effort to get financial advisors to transfer our annuities, which had actually made promises that were too juicy. The benefits were too good. And they figured out through some dealings that they could stop paying commissions to the salesmen if they stopped selling annuities altogether, with the bet that those annuity salesmen would transfer out the products and get them off of our balance sheet. And it worked perfectly, because the salesmen are just interested in getting paid.
Yep.
And the people who own the products don't know how good they have it, if it is any good. If it is any good, they still don't understand it.
Yep.
But there are issues with the fees, and that it doesn't actually, in some cases, it doesn't guarantee income for life. Which is really what's needed in a world where people continue to live longer. You can make a plan today that puts you out into the longevity calculations that we have with modern science, but at the rate at which health and wellness is advancing, you could do a pretty good job for yourself now, and because of a fantastic advance in modern science, still be left out to dry.
Yeah, and this is the problem, and we all face it. And this is what we need to solve. But if you go back to annuities specifically, when I started this journey almost 2.5 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, I was contacted by registered investment advisors out of the US. They said, "Oh, this is brilliant. This is exactly what we want to give to the clients. This is what we want to show to them." Because the annuities that we're having, which are our only option at the moment, we just don't want to do it. And I said, "Look, do me a favor. Can you send me over some brochures for your best-selling annuities?" And they sent me over these documents. They're like 60, 70 pages long. Even I couldn't understand them. I'm pretty certain you would struggle to understand this, because they're not there to explain the product. They're there to hide the fees.
It's pretty much just liability. That's why it's 60, 70 pages, is so that it covers every single intricacy, so that they can say that they gave the client exactly everything that they needed, knowing full well that client is never going to be able to understand it and make an educated decision based off of the information that's been placed in front of them.
Exactly. If you thought the terms and conditions on Facebook were already complicated, try reading the terms and conditions of an annuity. You need a maths degree just to be able to work out what the hell's going on.